This is Gary Zaleski, the host of The Gary Zaleski Show, the podcast for those who want to discover that human fuel called passion and build the life they have always wanted to live. I've been a professional speaker, author, and licensed minister for over 30 years, helping people professionally and personally who are tired of being stuck in the pursuit for something more. My wife calls me the human defibrillator because I jumpstart tired hearts and those minds that have checked out. I want you to become emotionally and financially profitable without sacrificing your faith or family. This show, it's all about the people I've connected with all over the world. People who have changed my life with their resiliency to never, ever quit. Shared moments that became lessons learned and laughter that took my breath away. Join me now in discovering the life you have always wanted to live. Okay, today I'm going to talk about the most misunderstood word in the English language. What is the most misunderstood word in the English language? To help me do that, I got a friend of mine that I have known for a long, long time. He's probably my youngest best friend. That's how I would describe him. Rylie Silva. My gosh, bro. They tell me that I'm like the youngest junior hire people have ever met. You're the most aged, I would say, millennial that I've ever met in the wisdom that God has given you. And bro, I just want to start by saying thank you. And I want to ask you, put you right on the spot. Who's Rylie Silva? And why should anybody want to stay on this podcast?
Oh, man. I think the only reason that anybody wants to connect with somebody is vulnerability. The whole idea that I think that I'm somebody who's just going to be out in the open with not only my struggles, but the pain that I've walked in my life. And I think people connect to pain because every human being, despite of your background, despite of your experiences, we all share that common theme called pain. And I've just learned in my life that people connect more with your vulnerability than they ever do with your ability.
Please say that again. If you're listening, write this down. Say that again.
People connect more with your vulnerability than they ever will with your ability.
Can you unwrap that for me a little bit?
Well, yeah, no, I just think people, what we tend to do, all of us, human nature, is to put our best out there. Especially me being in a ministerial background, growing up in the church. I like to talk about my wins. I like to talk about, man, look what God did, the platform that he built. Look at my successes, because if it worked for me, it could work for you. We sell this genie in a bottle type Jesus. And that's been my temptation throughout my faith walk as somebody who, that's Jesus back there. That's the worldview that I see through. And that might not be your background, but regardless of your background, we want to put our best foot forward because it's dangerous to let people into the weakness, to the pain. But really, if we're asking people honestly, the audience, they don't want to know the success that I built. They don't. That's why people are drawn to documentaries like true crime or what's really happening. Why? Because it's true and it's relatable. Pain is relatable. People connect with vulnerability because they want to know the real deal. And I think that the day and time of leaders who put their gifting out first is coming to an end because there's generations now who are hungry for, I don't believe that you have it all together. Actually, I know you don't. So tell me where you struggled.
Right. I'm sitting here right now. I'm going, thanks, Rylie. I sure appreciate that. Yeah, make sure you tune in. No, it's so real because to me, the most misunderstood word ever that is passion. And most people, I don't think they understand that the archaic definition of passion is pain. Yep. And so really what you're talking about right now is truly the true definition of pain. The most of passion. The people that I find significant and non-boring, to be honest with you, are people who have experienced pain at a deep level somewhere, and they made it. Somehow they walked through the pain, they learned some lessons, and they kept moving forward. Can you talk about that? Because I know that life hasn't been perfect for you. And when somebody comes on, like you just came on, I mean, if I'm a listener, I'm going, what? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
How do you walk through when you get knocked down, man? How do you get back up, and how do you keep it real?
Yeah. So just a quick summary of kind of where I've come from. I've been blessed in a lot of different ways. I had a fantastic childhood, amazing parents, really just blessed in a lot of ways. And come 8th grade, there was a shift in my family. One of my parents stepped into a life a life was revealed that was totally opposite of what I grew up knowing. I grew up in church, my grandpa, pastor, all my aunts, uncles in ministry. It was spoken over my life that, hey, this is Rylie, he's gonna be a preacher, all this stuff. So like that was the bubble that I was in. And then come to find out, like, this second double life is happening, and it's all revealed, and everything that I thought I knew was just wrong, in my opinion. I was deceived. And so throughout time, luckily, by God's grace, my parents came back together. Marriage was doing well. I got connected at that time into church, into ministry, into youth group, learned a lot by the way of youth group in the church that I was in. Amazing church over in Rockland, California, that just really God used to kind of protect me in that season of life.
Isn't that
and build
interesting?
Me up. And,
for you, your experience, the church protected you. And so many times we hear people telling about how the church hurt them or how they were damaged by the church. And here you feel like there was a sense of protection. I'm sorry, go ahead.
100%. And so, I was like, man, I'm gung-ho about this. I started to pursue ministry, went to Bible college for 2 years, came back, started working at that church from 2012 to 2020. So 8 years, led college ministry there, saw a lot of just amazing growth. I loved it. And just as God was transitioning me out of that into a new season that I didn't know what was coming, the script got flipped upside down again, and my parents' marriage went splat. And, it's like we always think in our heads, we're like, okay, I've been through the trial, I've been through the test, and I feel like I passed the test, so I'm good now, right? Like I learned my lesson from my parents and God fixed them, and there was redemption. And then all of a sudden another bomb's dropped, and it's even uglier. And I'm now in a season, I guess the way that I could describe it with those who are listening, it's like that moment where you don't know up from down, where everything that you thought you knew, you thought you understood a certain level of how the world works, how God maybe works. And then something happens and you're like, what? Like, talk about a pain, talk about betrayal.
That's heavy words, bro. Betrayal.
And that's where it's been. Like, that's where it's at. And there's not a point right now where like it looks like, I don't know how it's going to come together. It's not looking good. And so how have I gotten through that? I wish that I had a one sentence answer for you or a fancy quote, but you don't. I would say the only way that I've gotten through it is my relationship with the Lord, with Jesus. He is the Prince of Peace, the Bible talks about, and I can't really explain it. Sometimes he has to be experienced. And for me, it's been a daily offering of this pain, of this bitterness to him. And I started to, through that, go to counseling, and I stepped into therapy, which has been monumental in my life. As somebody who grew up again in the church, I'm used to like, hey, quick fix, come down to the altar, we're going to pray. And I believe in the power of God. I believe God can heal, all that stuff. But that's like what I was used to, is like, we're going to pray, and all this sorrow, all the pain, God's going to turn to joy. And I tried it during the season, and it just made me more frustrated because I still had all of this in me. Anxiety was building, stress, frustration. And it turned into a little bit of anger towards God, because it's like, hold up, I'm here to serve you. Like I'm I'm in ministry, I'm doing this stuff, but why are you allowing these things to happen to me? And I realized that God doesn't separate our spiritual health from our emotional health. And a lot of times what we like to do in the church is just put a spiritual blanket over stuff, pray, sing the song, go to church, God will change it. And it's like, well, God also works within these things called our emotions, and we have to go through a process of working those out. And that's where I'm at.
I'm sitting here blown away because I think the problem with altar calls is they don't alter our call.
Yeah.
Seriously. I mean, I'm not against altar calls. You know that. You know me. I believe in all. But altar calls were invented 150 years ago. So what did the church do before the altar call? Well, they did what you're doing and what we need to do, and that is to keep it real. Be real with who we are. And unfortunately, we can't do that many times for an hour on a Sunday. That's an event. That's not how we do life. So my question to you is one of trust, because it's like the Charlie Brown cartoon where he's getting the football's pulled away at the last minute. And by the way, at age 70, that still happens to you over and over and over again.
Wow.
So it's not something that there is no quick fix. Rylie, how about your trust? When you trusted that something was healed, you trusted that it was taken care of, you trusted that it was, man, I can now move on. And all of a sudden, everything you trusted in, and let me say, maybe at some level, even God, was over. How do you come back and get that trust back, or does it, or do you never get it back?
Yeah. I don't want to speak from a place of like finality, in the sense of like, I haven't arrived there.
I love that.
So what I'll say is, like, as I'm trusting, I'm choosing today. I can't go down the line of 2 weeks. I can't go down the line of next week. Like today, there's a verse in the Bible, Jesus prays, and he's teaching his disciples, and he says, when you pray like this: Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. And he goes on to say, give us today our daily bread. Not weekly bread, not monthly bread. I need daily bread. And that's what God gives. That's what he offers. And so as far as trust goes, that's kind of the same thing. Like, I have to take it day by day. I have to forgive day by day. I think, with the situations that have happened and the people who've really betrayed, we think that like forgiveness is this one-time performance or this one-time event. And it's not. Forgiveness is not an event. It's a process. And scripture, the Bible, which is what I keep going back to, it confirms that. Like Peter said to Jesus, how many times do I have to forgive people? 7? And he thought he was being holy. Like, oh man, I'm going to forgive this person 7 times. And Jesus goes, nah, 7 times 77, meaning infinity. And what that means is sometimes we have to forgive the same offense 7 times 77 times. Why? Because even though my heart and my mind in one moment wants to say, okay, I forgive you, I'm giving you this, we still have something called biology. And our mind is a file cabinet. And I think of things, I remember things. And so I brought this issue up to my therapist because I thought I'd done the event of forgiveness. Here you go. I forgive you. You don't have to carry this anymore. All right, God, I'm moving on from it. Let's stop the pain. But my memory, my mind remembers everything that's happened. So I remember the call that I got when I found out that something terrible was happening. And my body reacts to that. I remember certain smells. I remember there's certain things that will trigger memories in our minds and get me back into that place of, oh, I'm betrayed again. Now I'm mad. So I brought it to my therapist. I said, what do I do with this? Like, I'm trying to move on. I'm trying to get over this. And first of all, he says, you don't get over it. You don't get over pain. You get through it. And that doesn't necessarily mean that there's not always a finality to it. It's like, buckle up, buddy. This is life. Like, we're going to have to learn how to navigate while the feeling isn't matching this promised future, meaning like, I want to forgive, I want to get past, I want to get through this, but my feelings, my mind, my emotions still remember these things. And so he said, you've got to get to a place where you understand that it's one thing how did he say it? I think I wrote it down somewhere. Let me see. Oh, he said there's a difference between keeping a record of pain and rehearsing pain. And he said, Rylie, what you keep doing is rehearsing pain. And that keeps you stuck every time. Meaning I would go back to that moment in my head, or if I would try and get over it and I'd wake up and I'd have a dream and be reminded of it, I would then think about that for the whole entire day, how I felt, where I was, who I talked to. And as you rehearse pain, your body actually begins to experience it again. Your mind does, and it releases chemicals. And it's like, man, why am I stuck? Why can't I get past this? Well, it's because you're rehearsing it. Right. There's a different way to get through that. And that's called, it's not going into a place of experiencing it again. And so if you can't tell your pain in 1 minute, like when I told you what's gone on in my life, it was 1 minute. Why? I don't need to go through every detail, because then for me, it'll put me back into that place of pain. The trusting thing comes down to a day-to-day decision to understand that there's a God who's bigger than my pain.
You know, that such good stuff, bro, because when I think about forgiveness, I know people that are listening, because I've heard this many times, they'll say, well, that's easy. That's easy for you to say. It's easy for you to say to forgive somebody. But you don't know what these people have done to me. You don't know the level of hurt and pain, embarrassment, damage that has come to me as a result of what they've done. And so you might be able to forgive easily, Rylie, but if you're asking me to forgive somebody who's done what they've done to me, is there an association, do you think, bro, where people think that when you forgive somebody, you're saying it's okay what you did, that you're giving them a license to say, do it again and again and again?
Yeah.
So I know the battle for a lot of listeners are like, when I forgive somebody, am I saying it's okay what you did?
No, not at all. I oversee a class here. It's called Divorce Care. And I facilitate it. I don't teach it. But the teacher, she's amazing. And she was teaching these people who have gone through some incredible betrayals of their own, people cheating on them, just awful things. And next week is on forgiveness. And so she always has to, it's the least attended class of the 13 weeks.
Is that crazy?
Crazy, because people look at it and they're right. Like what you're saying is true. There's certain things where it's like, no, you don't understand. And maybe you're out there, you're like, yeah, I have the sleepless nights, the constant, what almost seems like badgering of the offense is happening to you. And so even the thought of forgiveness is like betrayal to yourself. I listened to this woman talk to him, and maybe you've heard this before, but forgiveness isn't for them, it's for you.
Perfect.
And I remember actually sitting with a friend of yours, Scott Hagan, and he shared, we were ironically in Hawaii with mutual friends, and we were doing a devotional every morning, and we sat on the beach, and he did a devotional on forgiveness. And he said that very thing, that forgiveness isn't for them, it's for you. And the way that he described it is saying, when I say I forgive you, what I'm doing is taking this offense and saying, I forgive you here. It's not mine to carry anymore. It's yours. And when you understand that, first of all, forgiveness, it doesn't require their realization that they needed it, or, that they should be sorry. It's not that, because it has nothing to do with them. Forgiveness is about you. It's about, for me, it's about my relationship with God and saying, okay, I'm just choosing not to let this thing replay in my head again and again and again. And it's the nicest thing I could do for myself, because then I'm freeing myself from the pain of the original event. It's the beginning of that. And so, yeah, it doesn't mean, and also a misconception is that forgiveness means you have to be back in relationship with that person. Not true. I can forgive you and never talk to you again. It's just saying I'm not going to be imprisoned by bitterness.
It's a very interesting thing because we feel like when we're forgiving people, somehow we're giving them a pass for what they did. And in reality, we're unlocking prison doors at that point, theirs and ours.
Yeah.
Because anything that we harbor inside of us, we create walls. And the walls that I don't know, for me anyway, the walls that I've had built up inside of me to protect myself from people, and they're hurting me and disappointing me, they were walls that were not keeping them from coming into me. They were walls that kept me from going out and fulfilling the will of God in my life. Because God has some plan, man. He has something that he wants us to do, to be. He wants us to live life. And my wife, Cherie, she says this, when people do something that bothers you and you start rehearsing it, she goes, it's a gnat in the palace, man. It's just a gnat in the palace. You need to, she says, you need to be more broken for people than bothered by them. Mm-hmm. And when I'm rehearsing people's hurts or things that have happened to me, the only reason I'm rehearsing those because I don't have the courage to fulfill what God's asking me to do right now. I don't have because I'm called to the battle, baby. I might be 70 years old, but don't give me a broom. I still got a hand that wants to carry a sword, right? But we're so busy battling these inner, oh, look what they did. Look who hurt me. Get off your butt. Get out into the field. Start serving again. Start loving Jesus. Start finding the passion that he put inside of you. And you'd be surprised how some of that rehearsing goes away. And I know with you, bro, come on, man. Look what the Lord is doing in your life now. I mean, you're going back. Cherie says this all the time. She goes, I'm quoting my wife so I can get some major points today.
Yeah.
But she said, it's not the tragedy. It's not when people get knocked down. The tragedy is when they don't get back up again. And so I want to switch gears for just a second. And I want to talk about your passion. I want to talk the thing that puts fire in your bones, Rylie. I want to talk about the thing that gets you up in the morning, gets you fired up, gets you that one thing that when you're doing that one thing, you are fully afraid and yet you're fully alive at the same time. What is that thing that's going on in you right now?
Yeah. So in the context of how we just described passion, that passion is pain. Yeah. Like the Latin word literally means suffering. So think of the passion of Christ.
Finally, I met somebody that's got it. Go.
Yeah. The passion of Christ is the suffering of Christ. So my passion has come out of my suffering. I will say pain can, if you allow it, it can act like a GPS to your purpose, where God takes that thing and goes, okay, now I'm able to start using you because you're broken. That's a thing that I think God has to cut us down before he can build us up, not out of cruelty, but because he can't trust somebody who hasn't been through things. Like God couldn't have trusted me before. I was successful in a lot of different ways of ministry before, but I wasn't to be trusted with people really because I hadn't been broken yet. So the thing that gets me going, to be honest, is I want to be a first responder to people's pain. Meaning the same betrayal that I felt, the same experiences of sleepless nights and anxiety or whatever your specific experience has been, I feel called to show up for people in that space. Not to fix them necessarily, but to sit across from them and one, either hear, allow them to process, or two, to give wisdom if it's what's needed in the moment, or sometimes it's just to be there. And so I'm working right now on a master's in clinical psychology counseling, which is not anything that I thought I would be doing at all, but I am passionate about being with people in their moment of, I don't know how I'm going to get out of this, not to be their savior at all, but just so that while they're in the depths, that they're just not alone in it. And so that's what I feel passionate about. And the thing about passion is because everybody on earth is trying to figure out, what's my passion? What's my purpose? For me, I've found that my passion is the thing that I think about at night, where I'm actually just thinking about doing it. Like I'm thinking about sitting across from people. I'm thinking about being able to be fulfilled in that. I'm not thinking about the success that thing brings. Does that make sense? Like a lot of times when we think about passion, we're like, so then that's great because when I do this, then I'm gonna get this kind of attention. I'll probably get a raise. No. When it's truly your passion, you're only just thinking about that thing, not the growth that comes.
Rylie, I'm going to have to do about 18 more podcasts with you because I'm doing everything I can right now to discipline myself to not be an interrupter. Because
interrupt, man, I'm good.
Oh, no, Rylie, what you're saying is I'm actually getting goosebumps because everything you're saying, I believed for years and years and years, and I've never heard somebody else really articulate it like you're saying. The idea of passion, people think that passion is what you do. Passion is what you're called to be. It's not I do passion, I'm called to be it. In Jeremiah 1:4, it shows in Jeremiah that Jeremiah was called to be a prophet, not do prophesying. He was a prophet. He wasn't a doer of prophesying. He was a prophet. And so when he was called in the womb, that says to me that passion, the call of God on our lives, is in our DNA. And that's why when children are being attacked so much, and it's funny because when we're little, our parents will say to us at one point, what do you want to be? They always start with, what do you want to be? When you ask somebody what they want to be, imagination is released. God's creativity is released. I want to be, they imagine whatever, nothing gets in their way. Then we say to them, what do you want to do when you grow up?
Yeah.
Now you have to have gifts, talents, and abilities in order to fulfill the do. See, Rylie, I've watched you since you've been in junior high, man. I've watched
Younger
you.
than that.
Younger than that. I just don't want to go there. Thank you.
Yeah.
But
yeah, it's fair.
The Rylie that can speak in front of a crowd, I've seen you do that. But the moments I've seen is when there's a crowd of people. You've never noticed this, but when there's a crowd of people and somebody's talking and I look over and it's Rylie separate from the crowd talking to an individual, even though there might be a lot of other things going on, you're in contact with that individual. And every time I've talked to you, you've never lost eye contact with me. And so even back in those days, your passion to be that one-on-one help, it was there. Here's the other thing. Let me share this with you. Passion is never done in a secret place. That's where addiction is done. Addiction can only grow in secrecy. Passion can only grow in a public arena. And so the reason that you're taking your master's degree, and by the way, major congratulations on that, is because
thank you.
Somewhere along the line, you're going to want to teach somebody else to do what you do better than you do. That's where passion is truly fulfilled.
That's good.
And I can't imagine, by the power of the Lord Jesus Christ, a better person to sit across in the craziness and the white noise of this generation than a Rylie Silva who's walked through the hell of what it really means to trust with the intimacy of the Father when the enemy has tried to come in over and over again and tell you that intimacy is no longer available.
Yeah.
And that's why I have no idea how this podcast was going, but when you describe passion as suffering, nobody talks in those terms. We think that passion is seeking the pleasure of what we do.
Yeah, that's good.
It's not a pleasure-driven calling. It's a suffering calling. Pleasure, there's pleasure, but it's not the purpose. So tell me more about your master's, how in the world at your old age are you doing a master's? How did that happen? Because there's people that want to do stuff, but they keep waiting to do it.
Yeah. Well, so when I was working at the church, I just felt this stirring for something different, not like, oh man, God's going to elevate me to this big thing. I just knew that I was like a round peg fitting into a square hole for like the last 2 years of my ministry. And God was okay with that. I think sometimes we freak out and we're like, oh, I got to run. And it's like, no, you need to sit in that for a minute. And I thought that was going to be like a quick minute. It was 2 years.
A quick minute.
And it wasn't even like I went from one thing to the other. I just knew my time was done. And to honor where I was at, I needed to leave when it was time to leave. So as I left, I didn't know what it was next at all. I knew one thing. I don't want to go to school at all.
Yeah. People say, never tell God what you don't want. So I keep saying, Lord, I don't want to live in Hawaii on the ocean.
Yeah.
I don't want a beach house.
I don't want $1 million. It was just like the one thing. I'm good. I love working with people. I'll do whatever. I'll sacrifice everything. Put me where you want me to put me, but I don't want to go to school. I finished my bachelor's, had no idea what I was doing, and it's been a 2-year process, and I just started a month ago, 3 weeks ago, Concordia University. Dr. John Townsend is an author. He wrote the book, you've probably heard of it, with Henry Cloud. It's called Boundaries. They've written multiple books together, but it's his organization. And what's crazy is I was working in the Bay Area at the time. I was doing a job, working with the homeless, Bay Area Rescue Mission. So every Tuesday I would drive down to Bay Area and help out with this organization. And as I'm driving, it's in the middle of what's been going on with my family, like the week of. And I found Dr. Henry Cloud on YouTube, and he does like these videos basically to help people in their day-to-day life. And a lot of the stuff he was doing was applicable to my life at the time. Like, hey, you got to have boundaries with some of these people who have hurt you. If you keep getting hurt again and again by the same person, that might be a you issue because you're allowing that to happen. So anyway, he's sharing all the depths of this stuff. I'm like, man, this guy's really good. Well, the next Tuesday, something awful had just happened the day before. And I'm crying on my way to work, and I turn his thing on, and he's like, so if you have any questions on how to deal with something, you just make a call, come in, and blah, blah, blah. So I'm like, all right. I mean, I'll just
Come on, Rylie. You made the call.
So I call, and it rings twice. The guy's on the show, and his associate answers, and he goes, hey, can you tell me a little bit what's going on? I was like, yeah, here's what's going on. Told him everything. He's like, I said, can I use an alias because I don't want anybody's names to be out there? He's like, yeah. So I used a fake name.
You used my name?
Yeah, it was Gary Zaleski. He's like, hey, I'm going to put you in because this is really, really deep. So I was like, all right. So he puts me in, and I'm on with Henry Cloud. And he starts talking to me, and he gives me like these very logical steps of like basically telling me, you're not a victim, dude. Like, I know it feels like it. And so he just goes through this stuff, and I'm like, holy cow, like I've been victimizing myself, all of these things. And yes, awful things happen to me, but I'm not a victim. And it just opened up something for me. And I kind of thought, that's what I want to do. Having no idea that the school I would get into would be the one where his co-author was leading. And he actually, like, our textbooks are all of his stuff. No idea. And so my long process was all God. Just, I don't really know. I haven't, again, it's not final. I'm just taking the next step, working and pursuing it, and just seeing, okay, this is what I know I want to do. This is my passion. And there were a lot of things back here, a lot of misconceptions about passion that I had to get over to get to that place, though.
I'm so thrilled because I think that when you're a young Christian, that things just kind of happen for you. You step into one thing, and the next thing happens for you, and then you're here and you meet somebody, and that door opens, and then, oh, another door opens, and then something happens where the doors don't open.
Yeah.
And they remain shut. And as your doors remain shut, you're watching amazing doors open for other people.
Mm-hmm.
And there comes a time in your life where you say, Lord, I've got to trust the intimacy, which is a total acceptance of the will of God and the total trust in the will of God. And I remember when I was just seeking the Lord on a lot of things. I've gone through so much in my life, and I was just praying about intimacy, and the Lord said this to me, Gary, the intimacy question is not about how I trust you or accept you. Gary, I trust you totally right now. I will never trust you more than I trust you right now. I accept you 100% right now. There's not a thing you can do that will make me accept you more than I do right now. That's not the issue. I wish that you trusted and accepted me as much as I trust and accept you.
Yeah.
That was the issue. And man, doors don't open like that as you walk in your faith. You never know. And the other thing too is, could it been, I'm just asking now, this old, I don't want to go to school. I don't want to be going to school. Was the issue with school, Rylie, was it you felt incompetent? You felt that you wouldn't be able to do it? You felt less than? Why was it such a big issue about going to school of all things?
Insecurity. Yeah, it's all the things that you just said. I felt incompetent. I had a learning disability as a youngster. And so I was in like the special programs, and I guess it was a form of dyslexia. So just the learning process was very difficult for me. And so I just skated, but I barely, by the skin of my teeth, graduated high school. I went to college, Bible college, and that was the first time I did decently well because I was passionate about it. But I didn't have a desire. And a lot of the things that were spoken over my life were, you're great with people, not necessarily, the smartest.
Oh, gosh. I call them passion killers. And many times the passion killers are the people that are closest to us many times. So now you say yes to the Lord when it comes to this idea of a master's, because there's people.
I didn't say yes out of a place of obedience. I said yes out of a place of I have to, because there's no other way. So I don't want it to be like, make it seem like I was, all right, God, I'm going to pick up my cross of this. It was more so like, to get where I know I have to be, I have to do what I hate doing. And I just either at some point have to I didn't have peace about it. Because I hated school. I wanted to quit while I was at orientation a couple weeks ago. And my wife's like, no, we're doing this. But I'm like, all right. So, and in the group that I'm in, the school that I'm in, you can't get below an 84 or you fail. I'm like, I've not even gotten 84 prior to this. It wasn't like, man, I'm really looking, God spoke to me and I have to do this. It was like, I have no other option. This is what I have to do. And sometimes, I think a lot of times God's good with that. There's a quote that says, sometimes God will confuse the mind to reveal the heart, or offend the mind to reveal the heart. And that's kind of what I feel like this is a little bit this isn't what you want, but is your heart in it enough to take this step? And sometimes we think man, I need to have a peace before I do something. I think that's true for a lot of things, but not always. I think sometimes that's a Christianese thing to say. I think sometimes peace comes after obedience. It comes after you choose the right thing. And I feel like I'm there now where, okay, I made the decision. This is what I'm doing. And I feel like I have a peace. It's not going to be easy. I'm not looking forward to it, but I do have a peace about doing this. And so that's how I ended up going back to school, is because I have to. And if I'm going to truly help people and sit across and offer them some tools to get through this pain that they may be experiencing, I better know something about the mind. Or, nothing wrong with life coaches, but then I'd just be a life coach.
Here's some encouragement, bro. I'm in my second, well, almost done. I'm towards my capstone in my master's. And so at age 69, during the deepest, darkest depression of my life, my wife came to me and she goes, "You're not being stimulated or challenged at all. You're becoming a recluse. And I can't take it anymore. You've got to do something that's going to begin to stimulate something mental in your." And so it was either take the master's or maybe lose my marriage.
Wow.
And so to listeners who are listening, truly listening, passion and fulfillment is not necessarily cheering at a football game. That's not passion. Passion isn't, and it's not even give him praise. That's something I don't always understand, but God doesn't need my applause. He wants my obedience. When I began the master's at 69 online, I don't know, I'm not from the online generation. It was so scary. It took me 3 weeks to figure out how to register for the class. I quit doing the masters 3 times a day for the first 4 months. And then somebody who told me this, that Gary, a master's is designed to see how long it'll be before you quit. That's how it's designed.
Jeez.
And Rylie, Scott Hagan, our mutual friend, my best friend in the whole world, he said this to me. He said, "Gary, listen, when you do the master's degree, people are not impressed with your writing ability. They're not impressed with your great thoughts. They're not. You might be, but they're not. They're impressed with one thing. Are you meeting the quote, the citations within the course?" And Rylie, when you first start, everything's going to get crazy. But here's what I was told 2 years ago. After a while, you'll just know what to do. Are you ready? You just know what to do.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, it's the best thing that ever has happened in my life.
What do you feel like the result has been from you choosing that?
The big thing is self-discipline. Is that you are within a structure that has absolutely no emotions when it comes to you. It doesn't care. This is what you do, and this is when it's due. This is what I'm asking. This is, you better read. You better. And before, it was with me, and you know me, bro. It was all personality, man. It's rock and roll. Gary Zaleski.
Me too.
Hey, I'm here up on stage. A master's degree takes you down to the most basic part of who you really are. It tells everything about you. And it's one of those things where you just know that do what it's asking you to do. And here's the encouragement, and I say this humbly. After 2 years in this master's, my last week, I received a perfect score through the entire course.
Wow.
It's 100% and I wept.
That's no joke.
No, dude, I just wept because it's there. It's in us, Rylie. So I'm so proud of you.
That's so awesome.
And just keep going, man. Don't quit. I tell people this all the time. God can deal with your failure. He can't deal with quitting.
Yeah.
Don't quit. So closing remarks, Rylie. People are listening right now. They're hearing this, and I'm going to be listening to it a lot. Somebody's sitting there right now, and they are more lost in what they want to be doing. Maybe they've never been to church. They've listened to some of our Christianese. They have no real clue on what maybe some of that what we're talking about, but they know something inside of them that they're called for more. They're called to be more. They're called to believe for more. But something has blocked them, and every time they think about it, they become so overwhelmed that they turn on the TV rather than maybe make a call into a show and get, So what do you say to them, bro, to get them unstuck, bro? What do you say?
I would say you got to take that thing that you're fearing the most, probably, is the vulnerability that I started off with. You just have to go there. You have to go to that place of what's stopping you is you. That's it. That's the only thing. And me as a Christian, I believe that I had every tool. I know that I had every tool in front of me that I needed, but I was stopping myself. It's the paralysis of analysis, where I delay myself. I find every obstacle that's in my way. I can't do it. So to the person that's listening, you're in pain. That pain is probably blocking you from a lot of things. I would embrace the pain. You have to. And whether that be going to counseling, whether that be finding a very, very trusted person to begin to process with, you have to do it. You got to go there. And it won't make you successful, maybe not. And I think this is my biggest misconception of passion, is that I thought that the passion is what led you to success. It's not. God doesn't call us to be successful. He calls us to be fruitful. And building fruit in our lives takes time. A tree or a seed is planted, not a tree. And if you allow yourself to go through that slow, really painful process, that's the breaking of you. That's the picking up your cross. That's the going there and allowing God to begin to use you in a way that you never thought you could. And that, again, what I'm not saying is success, because oftentimes what's truly successful isn't fruitful at all. And what's fruitful doesn't always look like success. So you have to be okay with not looking like a success to get to where God has called you to be. My grandpa once told me, I said, like, Grandpa, what's God's will? What does that mean? And he leaned back as he does, and he says, Rylie, if you want God's will more than your own, then you're in God's will. The will of God, the passion of God for your life is not a place. It's not a person. It's the posture of your heart to say, God, I want what you want more than anything. So if that's your true heart, you're there. You're in his will. And as you stay submitted, he'll guide your steps. It's easier to steer a ship that's moving than one that's still. So that's why I'm doing masters. That's why you, Gary, are doing your master's program. God can guide you, and he will.
Rylie, I have a question. Would you be open to coming back on again at some point so we could just talk about the 19 things that you mentioned that we weren't able to address yet?
Let's do it. Let's do it. Maybe next time I can interview you.
Oh,
I did too much talking this time.
Well, I tell you what, I just love you so much, bro. And I never know the way these things are going to go, but I know that the hand of God is in the heart of this. And I just want to say to those who are listening, if you have questions, and you might, who doesn't, right? You can email me, and believe it or not, I answer my own emails at Gary@GaryZaleski.com, and we'll have that later on. You'll see it on the screen, because I never want you to feel that you're in this by yourself, that you have no place to go. You cannot fulfill what needs to happen by yourself. You need to have somebody come alongside and assist you in some way. So don't just isolate again. Don't hang up and just go away and say, I'll make it happen. It won't happen. Rylie will tell you that. Rylie, we love you, buddy. I love you so much, man. Thank you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for sharing things that have kept me on past my 30-minute limit. Yeah. Because normally I don't do this, but man, it was powerful. All right.
Thank you. Love you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for taking the time to listen to my podcast. If you have any questions about today's show or would like more information on how you can bring me to your next event, please reach out and I will be sure to get back to you ASAP. Till then, have a passion-filled day.